In a previous video, we compared the big three through the lens of the 5 most important tennis records. And it was obvious that Djokovic is the greatest because he owns all 5 of them. However, if we compare only Federer and Nadal, at first glance, things are not so clear. It appears that they are evenly matched, and both fan bases could make a case why their favorite is better. But this is only an illusion. In this video, we will take a deeper dive into each of these records, and you will see why Federer is greater than Nadal. Let's get into it. The biggest bragging right that Nadal fans have over Federer supporters is the Grand Slam count. It seems irrefutable because 21 plus asterisk is more than 20. But there is another way to look at this. While Nadal has more titles overall, Federer is better than him in 3 of the 4 slams. Federer has more Australian Opens, Wimbledons, and US Opens, while Nadal only has more Roland Garros titles. Nadal fans will insist that only the total matters, but that's deceptive. Just because he stat padded in one tournament doesn't make Nadal better. It makes him more specialized. His fans will surely say that this is unfair to Nadal because there is only one clay slam. But that's a lame argument for many different reasons, which I will cover in another video. The next biggest tournament after Grand Slams is the ATP Finals, where Federer has 6 titles and Nadal symbolically has none. In other words, Federer is better in 4 of the 5 most important tournaments, and Nadal didn't even win all of them. Here's a fun fact. Roger is not the only player who is better than Nadal in 4 of the 5 biggest events. Sampras also has more titles in Australia, Wimbledon, US Open, and ATP Finals. The 3rd most important tournaments are Masters 1000, in which Nadal holds a 36-28 advantage over Roger. But just like in slams, Nadal only has a bigger total, while Federer is better in more different tournaments. Federer has more titles than Nadal in 6 Masters, while Nadal has the advantage in only 4, the 3 clay events and Canadian Open. Furthermore, Roger is missing only 2 Masters trophies from his collection, while Nadal never won 3 of them. As you can see, there is a pattern when we compare their big titles. Nadal has more slams, more Masters, and more big titles overall. But Federer is better in more different slams, more different Masters, and has won 6 ATP Finals to Nadal's 0. Roger has more titles than Nadal in 9 of the 14 big events. The only reason why Nadal has more trophies overall is that he compensated heavily on clay. Nadal won 40 of his 57 big titles on clay. Less than 30% of big tournaments are on clay, but Nadal won 70% of his trophies on that surface. His fans will throw a tantrum when I say this, but Nadal is a clay specialist. Nadal fans will retaliate by saying that Federer won most of his titles on hard courts. But guys, that's because most big titles are on hard courts. And even more importantly, Roger is not a one-surface wonder like Nadal. When we look at the win percentages on different surfaces, we see that on clay, Nadal is the all-time leader and Federer is 14th. But everywhere else, Roger is miles better. On hard courts and grass, Roger is in top 2 of all time, while Nadal is far behind. He is 10th on hard courts and 12th on grass. And Nadal is downright atrocious on indoor hard courts, where he is 43rd on the all-time list. Also notice that Nadal has a better overall win percentage than Roger, but Federer has a higher win rate on all surfaces except clay. Win percentages in the 4 majors show the same thing. Among the big 3 and Sampras, Nadal has the lowest win percentage in all slams except Roland Garros. And if we add ATP Finals, which many consider as the 5th slam, Nadal has the lowest win percentage in 4 of the 5 biggest events. There are many other stats I could show, but they all tell the same story. Nadal is only better than Roger on clay. I can't imagine that Nadal fans have enjoyed this video so far, but this next thing is really going to get their panties in a twist. Federer's titles are worth more than Nadal's because clay is the surface with the weakest competition. Think about it. Can you name any top player in the last 20 years, other than Nadal, who was a clay specialist? You can't. If we're being honest, the only player who could ever challenge Nadal on clay is Novak, and that's Novak's weakest surface. The fact is that it was harder for Federer to win because all top players are good on hard courts and most of them are good on grass. Not only did Roger face generally tougher opposition on his favorite surfaces, but he had to fight for trophies with Djokovic, undoubtedly the best hard courter that ever lived, and one of the greatest of all time on grass. When we take this into consideration, Nadal's tiny advantage over Roger in slams and big titles is meaningless. Before we talk about weeks at number 1, let's also mention the head-to-head record between Federer and Nadal. Just like in everything else, Nadal has more wins overall, but if we break it down by surface, the illusion evaporates. The overall record is 24-16 in favor of Nadal, but this is only because he has a 14-2 advantage on clay. Roger leads on grass, hard courts, and indoor. Two other things stand out in their rivalry. First, they played a disproportionately high number of matches on clay. Nearly half of their slam matches were in Roland Garros. And second, after 2014, Nadal never beat Federer on hard courts and grass. Roger defeated him 6 consecutive times. Both things are also true for Nadal's rivalry with Novak. They played more than half of their slam matches in Roland Garros, and Nadal didn't win outside of clay since 2013. Novak beat him 9 consecutive times. It is less important if Nadal avoided facing his biggest rivals on their favorite surfaces, or if he simply wasn't good enough to advance far in those tournaments. Either way, it's not a good look for a wannabe GOAT. The bottom line is that Nadal only has a winning record against Roger because of the clay inflation. Sadly for Rafa, being a one-trick pony left him with several glaring holes in his resume. His fans are aware of this, which is why they always want to boil down the GOAT debate to just one number. But for some reason, they never want it to be the number that would make the most sense. Weeks at number 1. What better way to figure out who is greater than by who was number 1 longer? Weeks at number 1 is an all-encompassing statistic that includes everything we have discussed and more. Instead of just titles, it also considers other notable results, like finals, semifinals, and so on. It reflects surface versatility and is the ultimate measure of consistency. It is incredibly difficult to become number 1, but it is even harder to remain number 1. It is not a coincidence that Roger is far ahead of Nadal in this key stat. The biggest difference between them is that one was a dominant champion in his own time and the other a pretender who only sat on the throne in short spurts. Federer defended his titles in US Open and Wimbledon 4 times, and his Australian Open titles twice. Nadal never defended a major title on grass and hard courts. Federer won 2 consecutive ATP finals on 3 different occasions. Nadal never even won ATP finals. Federer has 237 consecutive weeks at number 1. Nadal has 209 in total. Federer finished 4 consecutive seasons as number 1. Nadal could never string 2 consecutive seasons. Federer is the only man other than Djokovic with more than 300 weeks at number 1. Nadal holds the record for most weeks at number 2. Roger is not the greatest of all time, but he belongs to a succession of greats who ruled their own eras. He was what Sampras calls the man. Nadal never was, and no number of clay titles can change that. Federer is far greater than Nadal. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon.